It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. I was recently rereading a book that I enjoyed very much called The Stable Framework by Michael J. Berry. And a lot of people are wondering, we have a ton of stable classes on the AgileDad website. And I get questions from time to time regarding, what is this stable thing? Is it real? Does it work? How do we learn about it? Why aren't more people using it? And I'm just going to cut to the chase and tell you top three things about stable that you may not know. So, number one, it's relatively new. It doesn't mean that it's a repetitive, here we go again, in the old school way of reinventing something that was already there. This actually does fill a gap. So when you ask Mike specifically about stable, he talks about it's a combination between agile ways of thinking, including customer value, iterations, Kanban board reviews, etc., empirical learning, and cross-functional teams, and couple that with lean systems thinking, where you talk about value streams, Kaizen, theory of constraints, flow, continual improvement, etc., and operational excellence, where you start talking about systems thinking, quality assurance, a quality control model. And your whole goal is to stop feeding the hidden factory and start doing things in a more effective way, which I think is completely interesting. And I wanted to just pull an excerpt from the book because this is something that stood out to me the first time I read it, and it stood out to me again this time when I'm reading it. So anything that stands out to me twice, that's usually a good sign that it's something I need to talk about. So I'm going to take an episode to talk about this topic. So this topic has to do with leadership, specifically regarding the Master Chief, so the stable Master Chief. And it talks about personal leadership. And it outlines four elements that are fundamental for career success as a Master Chief. And it goes through these personal leadership qualities or characteristics. Now, it does lean on Maxwell leadership principles and other things like that. But what's really interesting is one thing that Stable does really well that other frameworks don't is that it dials in on people like Peter Drucker or John Maxwell, and it talks about some of the things Covey. It talks about some of the leadership things that we should all know, but it lends you information that you can ponder and chew on in a very simple, easy to consume way without having to go out and buy 17 different books. This pulls it all together into a nice tight package and helps you understand things that you can be doing better. So let's talk about each of these elements that are fundamental for career success. Number one is communication and networking skills. Now, if you ask me to highlight what the top or number one reason why agile projects or products break down, what is the number one thing that people do wrong? And I would say it's their inability to communicate. Communication is king in every single agile thing I've ever worked on, right? Whether it's Scrum, extreme programming, even PMP, where you're doing agile for 50% of it. The point I'm trying to make is if you don't have good communication skills, I don't care what you're using, your percentage of failure, your chances of failure are very, very, very high. So you need to be able to communicate within your teams, with other individuals in the organization. You need to have cross-organizational communication. Communication is the key to success for most things, but specifically, if you're trying to implement a framework where you can really have the flexibility to apply to things that work and the flexibility to dial back or dial down to things that aren't working for you and have control through quality management systems and whatnot, we can definitely dial in on how to get better communication and networking skills. And there's lots of great things you could do with that. In fact, I'm going to do a shameless self promo here. This is exactly the reason why I teach the Agile Coaching Skills Certified Facilitator class. It is the biggest focus on communication, networking, etc. And I think this is going to be the key. So if you can get the communication and networking skills down, the rest of these should come pretty easy. All right, let's go to number two. Number two says a strong work ethic. Now, this is interesting because I think this is probably the first of any framework that I've witnessed that actually takes the time to talk about the importance of having a strong work ethic. And I want to be careful because strong work ethic doesn't mean that you're willing to put in 12 or 14 hours a day. I would almost say strong work ethic equals a smart work ethic, that you're applying the things that need to be applied in order for you to be successful, but that you're not going over the top. You're not going heyday crazy trying to. It's so interesting to me to see how people do this. And yeah, the easiest way for me to draw a parallel is this. Sometimes you have people who work so hard that they're not working smart, and they feel like, oh, I'm putting in all these long days, but I'm not seeing any results. And then there are other people who put in 2 to 3 hours a day and get incredible results. And I think part of it is they're working hard and they have a strong work ethic, but they're also working smart. And that ties into number three, because it's funny how these roll together. Number three is good decision making skills. I want to be careful. Notice it doesn't say perfect decision making skills or excellent perfect decision making skills. It says good decision making skills. And I think the reason why good is used here, and Mike, you can call me out if I'm wrong, the reason why good is used here is because you can make good decisions and then change your mind, right? Good decisions aren't always right decisions, but a right decision is always a good decision. Does that make sense? So you need to make good choices. In order for you to be a stable leader, in order for you to be any kind of leader, you need to be making choices that are going to be impactful, that are going to help the team and organization achieve success. You need to set a pattern for how you're making decisions. But I think the most important part is you can't be afraid to make a decision. Sometimes you got to be that curious explorer, the inquisitive one, and you got to make a decision. And if it's the wrong decision, change the decision. But if it's the right decision, run with it. But I'm finding, especially in the generations of today, that there are many younger people who suffer from an inability to make a decision. So don't fall prey to that trap. Make sure you can make good decisions. All right. And finally, to round it out, the ability to deliver results with your team. And I think that's interesting because I want to read that one again. The ability to deliver results with your team, right? And I think that many people put themselves outside of the result part or the accountability part of this, when in stable framework, it clearly says that it's everyone's responsibility to work together. And if leadership doesn't understand implicitly what they can do to help the team be successful, if the team doesn't know what they can do to support leadership, you're going to wind up in a world of hurt. You're going to wind up in some pain. This following paragraph is really interesting. It says, the challenge is if you focus on any one of these too much, the others will suffer. As a leader, you must find quiet time to reflect on your goals in these areas and be sure that you're not neglecting any of them. Periodically, you should ask yourself if you have any working relationship that may need attention. Are there any skills that you need to develop or polish up on? Is there a problem developing that you can address now? Is your current performance measurement system addressing all the questions that your leaders ask? Stay focused on these questions as you work with the pros coordinating your value stream results in any given area. And a big part of this ties into building the right culture and changing the workplace culture if you need to, adjusting and adapting, helping people figure out how to build an ecosystem where you can have great communication, where you can have radical candor communication, an environment of psychological safety. I love in the book, he gives an example. I'm trying to remember, it was an acronym. I think it was an acronym for team, and I've heard it before. Together, everyone achieves more. And I think that if you come in with that mindset and that attitude and you walk in without bias, it makes it easier for you to put together a supporting team charter and a business charter that's going to help your teams understand how, like a team working agreement, it's going to help them work together. And I think that when you get to that point where you can put together all the right pieces, that's going to help you be successful in life and with stable, because, stable and life do kind of tie together. That's going to do it for this episode. I hope that you took away something of value. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. Also, if you want to learn more about stable, we have a roundtable coming up where we're going to talk all about stable, as well as the PMI certifications and Scrum Alliance certifications and the Scaled Agile certifications. So you're in for an earful coming up, one of our free webinar sessions. Make sure you sign up for those. They're free, 100% free, and we'd love to have you on board. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.